What if the best science fiction movies were never meant to be blockbusters? What if the films that asked the biggest questions were the ones most people quietly skipped? Science fiction isn't always loud, shiny, or easy. Sometimes it's patient, sometimes it waits, and sometimes it gets forgotten while flashier movies steal the spotlight. Halfway through this list, things start to get strange in the best way possible. And by the end, you may rethink what sci-fi is really for. Number 10. The Quiet Earth, 1985. Imagine waking up to a world that didn't end with noise, but with silence. The Quiet Earth opens with a simple, unsettling idea. A scientist wakes up and discovers that everyone else is gone. No crowds, no chaos, no explanation waiting neatly on a screen, just empty streets, unanswered questions, and a man slowly realizing that being alone might be more terrifying than any disaster movie explosion. Made in New Zealand and released with almost no fanfare, this film quietly slipped past global audiences. And that's ironic, because its influence is everywhere now. The entire last person on Earth concept has been reused endlessly, but few films approach it with this level of emotional honesty. The story is less about survival and more about what isolation does to the human mind when there's no one left to perform for. The movie leans into long stretches of silence, letting small details do the heavy lifting. A radio broadcast echoing into nothing, a house that feels too clean, a joke told to no one. It trusts the viewer to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to answers. The Quiet Earth didn't fail because it was bad. It faded because it was thoughtful, and thoughtful science fiction often ages better than spectacle. This film doesn't shout its ideas. It waits for you to notice them. Number 9. Enemy Mine, 1985. Two enemies crash on a planet that doesn't care who started the fight. Enemy Mine sounds simple on paper. A human pilot and an alien opponent are stranded together on a hostile world. They don't trust each other. They don't understand each other. And at first, they don't even want each other to survive. But the planet forces cooperation, whether they like it or not. Released during the height of big space adventures, this movie was quietly overlooked. It didn't help that audiences expected non-stop action and instead got something far more reflective. Enemy Mine is really about communication, about learning, about realizing that conflict often survives only because people refuse to listen. The alien character was created using impressive makeup and practical effects that still hold up. More importantly, the performance underneath the design gives the character real warmth and personality. Their conversations feel earned, awkward, and slowly human in a way that sneaks up on you. The film also mirrors real-world tensions of its era without being preachy. It doesn't point fingers. It asks a question. What happens when survival matters more than pride? Enemy Mine deserved better than its box office fate. It's not flashy science fiction, it's sincere science fiction. And that's exactly why it still works. Number 8. Strange Days, 1995. What if you could replay someone else's memories exactly as they lived them? Strange Days arrived before audiences were ready for it. Set in a near future that feels uncomfortably familiar now, the film explores a black market technology that lets people experience recorded memories, not watch them, feel them, see through someone else's eyes. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow, this movie blends science fiction with street-level tension and emotional urgency. It doesn't rely on futuristic gadgets everywhere you look. Instead, it drops advanced technology into a messy, human world and lets the consequences unfold naturally. At the time, audiences didn't know what to make of it. The tone was too intense. The themes were too close to reality. The film asked uncomfortable questions about obsession, power, and how easily technology can blur moral lines. What makes Strange Days remarkable now is how accurate it feels. The movie predicted how people would chase experiences instead of meaning, how recordings would replace memories, and how reality itself could feel less important than the playback. Strange Days didn't disappear because it failed creatively. It disappeared because it arrived early, and science fiction that shows the future too clearly often scares people away before they're ready to look. Number 7. Dark City, 1998. Have you ever noticed how rarely you remember the day before yesterday? Dark City begins like a mystery and slowly reveals itself as something far bigger. A man wakes up with no memory and discovers a city that never seems to see daylight. Streets rearrange themselves, people change overnight. and reality itself feels like it's being adjusted behind the scenes. This film was released just before another reality-bending movie took over pop culture, and once that happened, Dark City was quietly pushed aside. That's unfortunate, because its ideas are just as bold and, in some ways, more unsettling. The film blends old noir visuals with science fiction concepts, creating a world that feels timeless and artificial at the same time. The city looks lived in, but wrong, familiar, but slightly off. It's a place that feels like a dream you can't quite escape. Dark City asks deep questions about identity and memory without slowing the story down. It trusts visuals and atmosphere instead of long explanations. And that confidence gives the movie lasting power. This isn't background viewing, it's a film that rewards attention, and once it gets under your skin, it stays there. Number 6. Solaris, 1972. This is science fiction that doesn't hurry for anyone. Solaris is not interested in action, it's interested in memory, regret, and the emotional weight people carry into the unknown. Set aboard a space station orbiting a mysterious planet, the story follows a psychologist sent to investigate strange events among the crew. What he finds isn't a threat in the usual sense, it's reflection. The planet seems to bring buried emotions and unresolved relationships back to life, forcing the characters to confront themselves in ways they never expected. Directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, Solaris moves slowly and deliberately. That pacing turned many viewers away when it was first released. But for those willing to meet it halfway, the experience is unforgettable. The film treats space not as an adventure, but as a mirror. There are no easy answers here, no neat conclusions. Just the quiet realization that humanity doesn't always understand itself, even when surrounded by advanced technology. Solaris was never forgotten by critics. It was forgotten by audiences who wanted faster thrills. But time has been kind to it. This is science fiction that matures with you. Number 5. A Scanner. Darkly 2006. This movie looks like a dream that can't decide what shape it wants to be. A Scanner. Darkly is science fiction that feels unstable on purpose. The world wobbles, faces shift. Reality never fully locks into place. That visual style is not a gimmick, it is the point. The film uses a rotoscope animation technique that makes every scene feel slightly unreal, perfectly matching its story about identity slowly falling apart. Based on a story by Philip K. Dick, the film follows an undercover agent whose job requires him to blend in so completely that he starts losing track of who he really is. The future shown here isn't full of shiny cities or clean systems. It's cluttered, confusing, and emotionally exhausting. People talk over each other. Trust breaks down. Even memories feel unreliable. When the movie was released, many viewers didn't know what to do with it. The animation turned some people away. Others expected a faster, cleaner narrative, but those who stayed discovered something rare. A science fiction film that feels personal, messy, human. The cast brings surprising warmth and humor to the story, which makes the emotional weight hit harder when things begin to slip. This is not a movie that explains itself clearly. It asks you to sit inside the confusion. A Scanner. Darkly didn't disappear because it failed. It faded because it refused to simplify its ideas. And that bravery is exactly why it deserves to be remembered. Number 4. Primer 2004. This is the movie that dares you to keep up. Primer is famous for one thing. It does not slow down for the audience. There are no helpful montages, no hand-holding explanations. Two engineers discover something incredible almost by accident, and instead of celebrating, they quietly start making decisions that spiral out of control. The film was made on an extremely small budget, and you can feel it in the best way. Real locations, natural lighting, conversations that sound like actual people thinking out loud. The science feels grounded because the characters treat it like a problem to solve, not a miracle. What makes Primer special is how seriously it takes its own rules. Every choice has consequences. Every shortcut creates complications. The story folds in on itself slowly, forcing viewers to question what they saw earlier. Many people walked away confused. Some still are. But confusion isn't failure here. It's part of the design. Primer respects its audience enough to let them struggle. This is science fiction without spectacle, powered entirely by ideas and discipline. It became a cult favorite not because it's easy, but because it rewards effort. And once you step into its logic, it's hard to forget. Number 3. The Man from Earth, 2007. One room, one conversation, one impossible claim. The Man from Earth strips science fiction down to its core. No effects, no action scenes, no futuristic cities. Just a group of friends gathered for a farewell evening, listening as one man calmly explains that he has been alive for thousands of years. At first, it sounds like a joke, then a thought experiment, then something else entirely. The film unfolds almost entirely through dialogue, and that's where its strength lies. Each character reacts differently. Some are curious, some skeptical, some unsettled. The conversation moves through history, philosophy, and belief systems without ever feeling like a lecture. When this movie was released, it barely made a ripple. No major studio push, no flashy marketing, but word spread quietly. Viewers recommended it to friends not with excitement, but with curiosity. You have to see this conversation. What makes The Man from Earth unforgettable is how grounded it feels. The performance at the center is calm, controlled, and strangely convincing. The film never demands belief. It invites consideration. This is science fiction as an idea passed between people, and sometimes that's all it needs. Number 2. Gattaca, 1997. This future doesn't look cruel. That's what makes it dangerous. Gattaca presents a world where success is decided before you're born. People are quietly sorted based on genetic profiles, and opportunity becomes something measured, not earned. There are no loud enforcers here, just clean buildings, polite conversations, and doors that never open for the wrong people. When Gattaca was released, audiences didn't quite connect with it. The story was subtle, the conflict internal. But time has transformed this film into one of the most relevant science fiction stories ever made. The production design is elegant and restrained, creating a future that feels believable instead of exaggerated. The performances carry quiet intensity, especially as the main character pushes against a system designed to limit him. Gattaca isn't about technology itself. It's about how easily society can dress discrimination up as progress, and how ambition can survive even when the odds are stacked unfairly. This movie didn't age, it sharpened, and that makes it essential viewing now more than ever. Number 1. Moon, 2009. Sometimes the scariest thing is realizing you are not who you thought you were. Moon takes place in near isolation, one person, one location, one routine repeated day after day. A worker nearing the end of a long assignment begins noticing small inconsistencies. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough to feel wrong. The film builds tension through restraint. Long silences, empty spaces, subtle changes in behavior. The performance at the center carries the entire story, delivering humor, fatigue, and vulnerability without ever overplaying a moment. Moon arrived quietly and stayed that way. No massive promotion, no loud hype. Yet those who found it rarely forgot it. The film proves that science fiction doesn't need scale to feel important. It needs purpose. At its heart, Moon is about identity, labor, and what people owe to themselves when systems stop seeing them as individuals. It's thoughtful without being heavy, emotional without being manipulative. This is the kind of science fiction that sneaks up on you, and by the time it ends, it leaves you questioning more than just the story. That's why Moon earns the top spot. So, maybe the most powerful science fiction isn't the loudest or the easiest to sell. Maybe it's the kind that waits patiently for the right viewer to find it. These films weren't forgotten because they failed. They were forgotten because they asked you to think instead of stare. Now it's your turn. Which one deserves another look? And which hidden sci-fi would you add to this list? Share your picks, subscribe for more deep dives, and keep questioning the future you're being shown.